Hi, and welcome to another Pi Crowdcast. I'm Rick Turoczy, co-founder and general manager of Pi. Thanks for your patience. I think Crowdcast is under a bit of a load, so we had some technical difficulties getting going there. I'm really happy today to have Shelly Bell from Black Girl Ventures on the show. Welcome, Shelly.
Hey, thank you for having me. This is awesome.
So happy to have you here. Thank you so much for making the time. If it's your first time on Crowdcast, there's a chat over on the side where you can chat with in attendance. You can reach out to me. I'll be monitoring the chat during the time. So if you have any issues, technical difficulties like we just had, or any of that sort of stuff, feel free to chat there or feel free to talk with one another as you do. And if you have a question for Shelly, please use the Ask a Question feature down at the bottom of your screen. What that'll allow us to do is kind of queue up the questions rather than have them disappear in chat. But the other nice feature is allow you to also upvote questions. So even if you don't have a question to ask, pop over to the Ask a Question section, check out what other people have asked, and upvote the questions you'd like Shelly to talk about. And then we can kind of focus on those issues. All right, well, let's get going. I've wasted enough time with technical difficulties and stuff. So, Shelly, why don't you give us your bio and some context? Just introduce yourself to folks on the chat.
Yeah, I'm Shelly Bell. I'm the founder of Black Girl Ventures. We work to create access to capital for Black and brown women founders. One of the ways that we do that is we have a unique pitch competition, which is like live crowdfunding and pitching. And so it's like Shark Tank with an audience, except that everybody in the audience is a shark. The entire audience actually goes into their own pockets and donates to the women who are pitching on stage. I started in 2016. We've been traveling across the country doing this for quite some time. And we just expanded to incubate leaders on the ground across 5 different cities. And so in those cities, we have leaders that will come on board, and we actually train them to do what we do in the other cities, along with building community deeper and providing educational resources in those communities hyperlocally. You know, that is what I do now, right? Like that is what I do. I lead this huge movement. And now I'll take a step back from that to say I am an entrepreneur. This stint of entrepreneurship, because I've always been entrepreneurial, right? I was a nanny. I sold vacuum cleaners. I called myself a private eye at one point. That's a whole other conversation for a different day. But the reality is I had a fiance who did not want me to start a business. I had gotten laid off. And I was like, you know what, I'm going to start a business. And he was like, nah, I don't think you should start a business because that is not stable. That's not going to be great for our family. You know, we shouldn't do that. And so I didn't at first. I went to work. I got a job doing some patent search work, because also I used to work for the patent and trademark office at one point. And started working. And I hated it every day, but I was hating it really well. And so my boss called me in and he was like, listen, you're awesome, but this is not for you. You need to find what you want to do. And he gave me a really great package, but I was devastated. I went home and called California psychics. And I was like, oh my God, right? And so the psychic, the woman, she told me, when you find the thing that you want to do, the money will come, and you're not going to be with that guy. So, within 2 months, my relationship broke down. I threw everything out of my living room. I was going through this, what's happening to my life moment. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to start a business, right? Like, what am I going to do? And so one of the first things I did was I built a teepee. Okay, stay with me. So I'm like, you know what? I'm going to build a teepee, put it in my living room, and I'm going to rent it out. Okay, now everybody thought I was crazy. People were like, nobody's going to sleep in their living room in a teepee. I'm like, yes, they are. Watch, right? I'm going to build a teepee, put it in my living room, and I'm going to rent it out. And so I'm in Home Depot, and I'm buying the wood, and they're looking at me like, what are you, I didn't even know how to drill a hole. And they're like, what are you doing? I'm going to build a teepee, put it in my living room, and I'm going to rent it out. And they're like, nobody's going to sleep in your living room. I'm like, yes, they will. one of my friends who came over to help me, like after I thrown everything out of the living room, he was like 6 feet tall. I'm like, okay, you're 6 feet tall. I need you to lay down in the middle of the 6 because so I can make sure that a 6 feet tall person can sleep in a teepee. He's like, nobody's gonna sleep in your living room with teepee. I'm like, yes, they will. I'm gonna build a teepee, put it in my living room, and I rent it out, right? So everybody thought I was crazy except for my mom. My mom's like, okay, girl, whatever. What you need me to do? So she helps me put the bedding together. We put together this really great TP set up in my room. Put it on Airbnb because Airbnb has a TP option.
Of course, right, like you do.
And I had so many people who wanted to come to sleep in my living room that I literally had to shut it down. And think of, I let one woman come stay, and I quickly figured out that I did not want people to come to my living room and TP. And I started thinking about the model. Like, what else could I do with it? Could I build more and rent them out, like great margins? So I'm like, can I build more and rent them out at a festival? And it just wasn't working fast enough. So I started into like, what else can I do? And I learned, I was a teacher also. Like, I've lived many lives. I was a teacher for a while. I taught computer science because I'm a computer scientist by training. And I had learned how to do t-shirts at this school that I taught at. And so I was like, oh, I can do a t-shirt line. So my first t-shirt line was the LGBT line. It sucked. Nobody bought it. It bombed. And so I was on the phone with the printer I was working with one day, and I said, you know what? It's made by a Black woman. I should put that on a shirt. And so literally I went to the computer, designed the Made by a Black Woman logo to pattern after the Made in America logo. People loved it. It took off. We printed shirts. We went vending. That first year of business, which was the full year of 2010, magazine holiday gift guide, got an influx of orders. I started printing for other people, doing custom merchandise. I worked with Google, Amazon. Like, it just really flourished and turned into something great. The time I started Black Girl Ventures, it was because the news had come out that Black and brown women weren't getting access to capital, that Black women were starting businesses at 6 times the national average, receiving less than 2%, less than 1% even of venture capital. And I'm like, okay, well, let's just get together, throw some money together and give it away. And that's literally how it started. It was a brunch, Southeast DC, a friend of mine's home. I brought, it was people in, we threw money in a hat, 4 people pitched, and just took off from there. Naturally, just like business acumen, I started getting partnerships and working with different people, and it just grew and grew and grew and grew. And so here we are 4 years later with a 30,000 plus movement around creating access to capital for Black and brown women using leadership development, education, and community.
That's amazing. That's an amazing story. In reading up on you and kind of listening to some of your interviews and just knowing the work you've done and having followed you, I realized that community is just kind of core to what you do. How has that over the like 4 to 6 weeks where you can't be around people, or you can't be physically in the same space with folks?
Yeah, well, I gained 2 new coworkers, one who is just turned 18 and one who is 5. So I haven't exactly been alone, but from a broader community standpoint, it has been a challenge in terms of maintaining intimacy or the level of communication that we would normally have in person that are important to me and core to my brand. I'm a content creator, and the majority of my team are content creators. And so there's one thing we are good at is building relationships through content. My team, the way we operate is probably a little unique. We are never not talking, right? Like, we use WhatsApp. We used to use Slack. We moved from Slack to WhatsApp. And we're just, you might as well just have walked out of the room and like came back. Like, that's the way we communicate. I'm so thankful to have that kind of team working with me who understands I'm a creative, right? Like, all of this spawned out of me being a very creative person. So I'm in the 3 o'clock in the morning, like, what y'all think about this thing? You know what I mean? Like, hey, we should do tomorrow. Like, and so that has really, I think, caused me to be have a little less anxiety around being alone.
Mm-hmm.
I have, had to think a lot about just even my intimate team and our chapters, because there are so many places around the world, around the country, and just making sure everybody would check in with people. How are you? We have a person on our team that is a counselor. So she is a therapist and she does coaching. And so we've had her in touch with people. We also have one of our chapter leaders who's also a therapist. And so they have been stepped up to activate, to have individual one-on-one coaching calls with people in this time to just check in on them. So that actually has been super helpful. I've been doubling down on working through like personal and professionals for our team and for our we call our chapter leaders change agents, and for our change agents. And then with our alumni groups, we've been doing check-ins with them, and also setting up more like intimate meetings with them to get feedback from VPs. So we've been doing a lot more behind the scenes stuff that we normally would. I think normally we're like so out front. We're so everybody come in person. We're so, donate to these founders, things like that, in a very, very public way. But we now really, really focus on what does it mean to be virtual and intimate? What does it mean to be hyperlocal and virtual? And those get a little, it's a great area there. Everybody's, I think, trying to figure out.
And what are the feelings you're getting back from the community? Are people generally positive? Are they working their way through this, or are people stuck? Like what kind of feedback are you getting?
Yeah, it's a Ferris wheel, right? Like I won't call it a roller coaster ride. Right now, the ending doesn't feel like it's near. So I would just say it feels more like a Ferris wheel. So it's, being as inspirational and empowering as we can. Have people who are like, Shelly, I lost 2 months of customers in one day. I have people who are like, it's great if we get a loan, or it's great if we get some infusion of capital, but what I really need is my customers back. And I'm actually, I've been saying to staffers that I know, like, we really need Congress to push for incentives around getting people to consume again. Like, what would it look to do business? How do you do business with small businesses again? How do we incentivize people to do business with small businesses again, or more, or through this process, or when is this over? And what is that going to look like? Because I think that people will be social distancing for a while. Even if the quarantine lifts, I think we're going to be looking at social distancing as a new normal, I guess you can say. Yeah. So, I mean, people are, for the most part, positive, I will say. People realize the power of community more than ever. So we've been doing virtual coworking. So for women who are at home, Black women who are at home by themselves, they join the virtual co-working on Wednesdays, and that's become like a space of communing for people, even if they're working. We're talking and working, and all these things. So it's been like I said, I think it's more of a Ferris wheel right now.
Yeah.
But people seem positive for the most part.
Well, and we were talking about before we came on, just this kind of return to more intimate gatherings, rather than hundreds or thousands of people. What happens when you have a small handful of people communicating? Could you talk a little bit more about what you're seeing there?
Yeah, it's interesting because I would say maybe 6 months or so now, an article came out about influencers, where it's like influencers really couldn't this one woman, I believe it was, she has all these followers but couldn't sell t-shirts. And it was interesting because the idea that these numbers mean something, I think we're going to see that fade a little bit, right? Like, it's going to be less about the visual overarching number and more about how intimate and deep and engagement. How do people respond? Were people responsive? Were they sending questions? Were they chatting? Like, how deep was the engagement, which I'm actually excited to see. And I was sharing that I really appreciate the 30 or 40 people that join nowadays. Like, I think I also fell into the like, oh my God, I need 50,000 followers. I fell into that too. Like, oh my God, we have Instagram is you against the machine, quite honestly. And it's not even about the people who are on Instagram. It's you against an algorithm. But we work really hard to push out from that to actually implement sources. And now I'm just like, I really am loving the group of 30 people. I was just we did a fireside chat right before I came here with one of the writers from Insecure. And we had about 40 people who were on throughout the entire fireside chat. They asked questions. It felt like we helped more people versus just like a lot of noise. There's a lot of noise out there right now. You know, I'm looking at people who would never traditionally create online content who now have a whole conference. And I'm like, what? So I am more passionate about cutting through all of that to the people who are really like, I want to receive the intimate levels of feedback and community. And yeah, so the numbers look different to me now. Like having 40 people versus 200 doesn't feel alarming when it comes to virtual, in my opinion.
I think that's really good context and feedback for people. I think, through my experience with even this experiment, we're seeing similar things, we're not blowing the numbers out like would have been expected, a year ago, but we're seeing people show up time and time again. They're engaging in chat and asking questions, and it's been really rewarding to see that kind of trust come back in the community. So I really appreciate that context. I think we're going to change gears here. I could easily talk to you all day, but I want to make sure that the audience gets some of their questions answered as well. So if you have questions, feel free to use the Ask a Question button down at the bottom of the screen, and you can submit them there. And even if you don't have questions, head over there, see what questions have been asked, and you can upvote questions that you appreciate so that we can focus on the stuff you want to hear about. So Shelly, your first question is, what are your tips for us, the community, supporting Black and Brown female founders?
Yeah, office hours. One of my things is right now, and what I've been talking to the community about right now is the perfect time to build relationships. So, to focus on office hours, like how do you relate to people? Is your deck together? What is the rhetoric you need for fundraising? Because fundraising is a language and a practice. And so I think that, office hours. Another thing is giving them opportunity to be visible. Excuse me. How do you increase visibility for people? So we're thinking about in Black Girl Ventures, we're thinking a lot about like how do we celebrate the people who have been most active in our community, highlighting people, writing stories about them. We have a communications person that's actually helping people write op-eds. So I think, things where you can elevate and create visibility for people at this time. A few things in terms of just like how we can instruct the public to support businesses right now. You can do things like buy gift cards and give them to other people so that other people can actually become customers of the businesses if they weren't before. You can also, if you have a service provider that you would see regularly, a makeup artist, a nail technician, hairstylist, and you would normally tip them on schedule. So don't skip. If you can't pay for the service now, or paying for the service now may not work because you actually take up space on the calendar later when they will want to make money later. At least add that tip, double that tip, and then when it comes to you paying for your full service later, you could say, hey, I tipped during quarantine. I'm just going to pay for my full service now, right? Things like that. Also, like consulting. So one of the things I've also been looking deeply at is like in our community, what are the things that we actually need done in Black Girl Ventures that I could potentially contract out? And what does that look like? Even with your service providers, pay for one-on-one consultations. My makeup artist taught me how to do my own makeup. And then pull together people. So pull people together, pool the funding and get them to pay as if it was a one-on-one consultation, and have that service provider come and deliver that service to a group of you and your friends. That is another way to support businesses right now. I think right now, more than ever, from just the business owner standpoint, there is a lot of like sending all the resources you can possibly find. If you have actions, directly connecting people. Don't forget to just be empowering, like just be inspirational. Another thing I'm loving about right now is like typically I feel like it was getting to a point where inspirational might have been overdone in a way where people may have been starting to ignore it in some ways because so many people were trying to be it. But now more than ever, just turn around and just look right at your community and like focus in on pouring into them in any way. And that's the mushy stuff that doesn't have measurement around it that people don't normally kind of stay away from. But it is the thing that keeps people moving at a time like this.
That's awesome. Great advice. Thank you. And thank you for all those ideas. Those are really solid. Next question. Tell us more about your return on relationship method and some of your favorite examples of how it has been helpful for folks.
Yeah, so identify, activate, and foster. So this relationship building method is all about not just one-to-one relationships, but one-to-many relationships, and then identifying specifically who you want to target to build a relationship with. So the thing about the thing you can do as a business owner right now is maintain relationships with your customers during this time. If they're not buying into something directly, then how can you be a leader for what you're working on? Right. And that is that foster piece. So the return on relationship method is all about identifying exactly what do you want? Do you know how many people I ask, what do you want? And they have no idea. Like they're just in it. They're in it. They're in their business. They're moving. They're shaking. And it's like, okay. But what do you want though? And they're like, well, my goals are, okay, well, if you can't clearly communicate to me what you actually want to happen, then I have to question how clear your goals really are and your path to actually meeting them. But we're so trained to write goals, create goals, and like make them work that we don't necessarily step back and think through like, well, what do I actually want to happen? And then creating that really strong pathway to making what you want to happen for your business happen. And then asking yourself really great questions. What kind of questions are you asking yourself about the things you want to accomplish? That is what will lead to really great relationships and capital. I believe that all capital comes from relationship building. I don't care what kind of capital it is, by the way. I don't care if it's a loan, a grant, VC funding. Every piece of capital, financial capital, comes from relationships. So you want to have your ABCs of business, your attorney, your banker, and your CPA. Okay. You want to have those people on deck. Because even right now with the PPP stuff, like if something happened with your application, if you didn't understand some instruction, if you need a banker, not a teller, a banker that you can call and be like, hey, like you look into this for me. I've had money in this bank for X amount of years. This kind of thing is happening. So those relationships are super important, and our ROR method, which is return on relationships, actually helps you work through what it means to build the relationships that will keep your business going.
Yep. It's awesome. Next question. Given the amazing work you've done connecting and building community, what kind of changes have you had to make to keep up that momentum while so many communities are starting to stall and kind of flail during this pandemic?
So when it first hit, like when everything first hit and everything started shutting down, I was like, oh my God, what are we gonna do? And my digital lead, she was like, why are you tripping? We're content creators. And I'm like, oh, you're right. So I would say that, I'm a content creator, and 90% of my 90, I would say there's only one person on my team that's not a full-blown content creator, and she's a project manager, and we can't make it without her, right? So we were content creators already. And so I think for us, it was taking the resources that are out there and creating really great content out of it. And then, even the things like I just listed about how to support businesses, putting that content out. The pivots that we've had to make have been moving everything virtually. So we launched the Venture League. And so the ventureleague.com is a community for Black and brown women founders, where we are like putting all these events from friends of ours and our events and actually engaging people to engage each other. The power of community is not that the leader constantly engages everybody. The power of community is that it becomes many to many, right? Versus one to many. So, one of the things that we've been doubling down on is that many to many relationship. So with the virtual co-working, we've watched people create business referrals. And it's simple. We're actually doing super simple things like, hey, what are your goals? So when people come into the co-working, this is what we do. They come in and we say, hey, what you working on today? What's your goal? Drop it in the chat. And then, people activate as they're pouring in, they start to mention it, and it just starts to spark conversation. Somebody's like, oh, you're a CPA, I need a CPA. Oh, you were formerly in event planning. Well, hey, could you help me plan virtual events? Oh, you understand this? Oh, could you? And it creating many to many interactions has been a huge focus for us, and the way that we're is the major pivot point.
Yep. Does that take? Do you find that taking more effort or less effort these days? Like, is that a change in the way you work, or is that just kind of the way you've always?
That's such a great question. Sometimes it's more, but then I would say in the beginning it's more, but then once you get everybody started, they're off. Like, that's the beauty of the many to many connection. Is that like you just the leader that you trust to lead you in and get you into the pool of people that you can also trust, and from there they're running it. So my time, I've been using a lot more of my time to be very intimate and present for the community versus like letting my team, my team, all of us are there, but I mean, like, typically where I may appoint another leader to go in and, hey, can you host this session? Can you bring everybody together? We're doing it more like collectively as a team. So you see me, you see other people, you see, like, you're seeing the entire Black Girl Ventures team now, and not just like Shelly Bell or one of the other team members. And I think I will say that our community really honors the leader being involved. I think that's made a world of difference for really feeling intimate about the many to many. So it's more work at the beginning, and then eventually they're off. Yeah.
It's almost like I realize it's kind of an overused analogy, but I find that in our workspace, so often it's very much like that kind of dinner party, cocktail party kind of thing. Like, get the right people connected, let them start doing the connections, and then as an introvert, I can slowly back away and just disappear and let the party go on without me. So,
you know what though, to your point about like, I think you asked me before, like, how are things changing? I think I'm more introverted than I used to think I was. Like, I'm such an extrovert usually, but virtual interactions actually drain me a little more. I'm finding maybe it's because the effort to communicate through the screen or the technical issues or like those things just interrupt my spirit in a way that don't make me the happiest. So I think there's that. But I'm actually starting to enjoy, because I'm on Zoom call, like boom, 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 boom. And so I'm actually enjoying being away from the computer more than I was before. So yeah, I'm an introvert, I think, now than I used to be.
Yeah, I think a lot of introverts are like, I would actually like to see a person in person, and a lot of extroverts are like starting to experience that benefit of isolation. So it's a really interesting time for both sides to be kind of changing a little bit, I think.
For sure.
On your virtual co-working, one of the questions is, any chance Black Girl Ventures will have evening virtual co-working hours? Because I work on my startup on evenings and weekends and want to connect with other like-minded folks.
That's a great question. So it's interesting because even in the daytime, people are like, we want to keep on, we want to stay on. So like last week we had somebody who actually like they ended up starting their own like chat. We had to end that one. The short answer is yes. We're going to move the virtual co-working into being an actual, like, or as close to an actual real co-working space. So we're going to, we're moving it behind what will be our paid membership. And our paid membership launches on Friday. So to that point, we have a lot more availability to leave it open, to like, to transition into the venture league in a way where like, people are still able to like schedule times if they wanted to meet in what would look like a room kind of thing. So I think we're looking at like what would a full-on virtual co-working space actually look like. And that will sit behind our paywall. So the short answer is yes, there is room for that because we're considering leaving it open all day. Because we have so many people who are requesting for us to stay longer, or we do it from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Another thing is now that everything's so virtual, you got people from different coasts and on different time zones that want to join. So 9 a.m. is way too early for some people. And then so by the time they join, we have like an hour until we're closed. So there's many factors coming up, and with enough interest, I would say yes, we would open up, and maybe we'll do a different night that is a nightly one, because I think that's a good thought. I like that. I'll bring that to the team. That's a nice meeting. That's a great thought.
Cool. Thank you. As changing gears a little bit, as a creative yourself, how are you keeping yourself inspired and motivated to create during these times? And from my perspective, I'd like to add, does that branch beyond just content creation as a creative pursuit?
Yeah, so I just ordered some color pencils that will be here by 6. And I have really gotten back into coloring. I am actually working on some storytelling things. Storyteller, that's my creative self. And I'm working on telling my story more. So like telling my particular, like this, the story that I told you, but a broader piece of that goes back to like how I got here. And like, I've really become a lot more passionate. I was passionate about it before, but I feel a lot more passionate about helping people with thought leadership. So, so here's the thing. I'm just a nerd for real. Like, what I like to do for fun is to do like Photoshop tutorials. Like, so I created some really avant-garde art with my images that I'm going to put out soon. To promote this storytelling series that I'm working on. I'm going to just do like storytelling, like a 3-night thing that's just like all in. Here's how I got here. Here's what my life was like. This was from teen mom to TP to business leader. I
like how TP is one of the milestones in the story. This is my TP period right here.
Yes. So storytelling is my jam. I have a 5-year-old, so we watch lots of cartoon movies. And she actually likes makeup a lot. So she's actually better. I think she's really good at it. So aside from her like planning all of my makeup and me trying to stop that, we do a lot of I have to stop to play. I think that's one of the beautiful things of having children at home is that like I have to stop to play. So some of that creativity comes from my children, honestly. But I did buy color pencils today because I was like, you know what? I need to color. Like I can't do this. I need to color. So yeah.
That's awesome. One of the other adjectives I think about when I think about you, Shelly, is not only creative but resilient. Like you're creative at being resilient and coming up with new ideas of making it through. How have you relied on your resiliency during your journey thus far? And what advice would you give to those who are looking to develop more resiliency?
Oh gosh, that's such a great, that's such a really, really great question. Somebody asked what shade my lipstick is. I don't know the actual name, but it is my favorite. It is a matte brand. And it's like, I think it's like midnight blue or something. I am very passionate about lipstick, by the way. So I really look into it. I invest in them heavily. I buy ones that don't fade. And so I can like do whatever I want to do all day and my lips will still look like this. And they, yeah. So anyway, what is it? My lipstick is as resilient as I am. What do you live for? You know, and so like, and this is the thing. I've never been the person that's like, what if I die tomorrow? Because that makes no sense to me. You wake up way more times than not. so it's highly likely that you're gonna wake up tomorrow, right? And so I'm like, oh shoot, what if I do wake up? You know, like if I do wake up, then what do I want to do with that? And so I would say like being a single mom, like being I had my first child when I was 17, and from there it was like, okay, I got somebody else to take care of, and also part of like me storytelling is like, I got somebody else to take care of. I had my son at 21 while I was in college, right before I graduated, and you know, so then like I got two people to take care of. Like we got to go, we got to do this thing. Let me keep it moving. How can I? You know, and it became my fight for a long time. And I was always like, oh, the statistics say that kids of single moms don't graduate from high school. Psh, my kid's going to graduate from high school. Like, oh, the statistics say that kids of single moms are not smart. Psh, my kid's going to be smart. You know, oh, kids from single moms don't typically go to college. My kid's going to go to college. So here I am, you know, 21 years later, I would say, with one kid in college, one kid is about to go to college. And now I'm like, what is my fight now? Like what, like, did I actually need a fight? Right? Like, I feel like some of the stories that were fed through media and news too, like talk a lot about this whole like idea of like you starting from the bottom kind of thing. And the reality is you go from something to something way more times than you go from nothing to everything, even though all levels of people deserve support and nurturing and all the things that they need in their life. And so at one point I just had to wake up and be like, what do I have? Like, and how am I motivated by having more and sharing more and giving more and pouring more? You can't pour from an empty cup. And so I had to take time to figure out like, what can Shelly Bell do with Shelly Bell? What does that personal development look like outside of being attached to a fight? And I think my personal, professional, spiritual development is what keeps my resilience going. So I would say, you know, what do you live for? What's your discipline? You know, what are you disciplined about? One of my friends asked me recently, and I was like, oh my God. He asked me, what are you sovereign to? And I was like, wow, you know, that's such a really deep question. Because when you think about like your individuality and what have you been fed about it, told about it, what have you felt like you can be sovereign to, and versus what you actually can. And so I'm such you would never not find me on a spiritual journey. So like, so I'm always just like, you know, deep diving, you know, figuring out my stuff all the time. I think that has actually helped me, you know, asking questions, not answering not asking and answering, but just asking. Wake up every day with curiosity, you know, wake up with a question. If you're dealing with something and you can't find your resilience, then what questions are you asking would be my first step. And just wait for the answers to come. Yeah.
Thank you. Uh, oh, this is a good one. Both broader topic, but also to provide you with a little Portland context. Like, Portland is a town where people have a really hard time, like, charging for things or asking for their value and worth. So this question especially resonates with me. How do you assign real dollar value to your educational training and speaking work? I get stuck on what my expertise is worth and would love to hear your thoughts on that process.
If you want to know the truth, listen, okay, first off, there's no possible dollar amount that could ever amount to who you are and what you bring, no matter what level that looks like. All right. It's just not possible. You know, the idea that that a job gets to look at what I've been doing for the last 5 years and go, got it, 60,000. What? You know, like, says who, right? Like you wasn't with me when I was shooting in the gym. You know, like it's one of those situations. So I'm gonna tell you the most crazy, hard to adapt thing ever, and that is just make it up. Okay,
Fair.
just freaking make it up, and like make up one, and then see if people, you know, hey, what you think about that? Somebody hit you up, hey, we need you to do this. You know, like now, okay, now that is one way. All right. Another way is you could take your product, service, what you're actually giving, your hours, break it into numbers. You know, so you could say, you know, right now I charge at least $225 an hour for a one-on-one, right? And so I take that $225 an hour and I say, okay, if I'm going to do a speaking engagement, then my bottom level for speaking engagement is 5K. And now, so it depends on, and I'm sharing that very open and transparently. And it really depends on the entity. So there's no one all be all. Like when I used to do poetry, one of my friends used to help me get bookings, and she used to say, okay, here are the questions you need to ask before you decide what you're going to charge. Is this a paid event? Is there going to be a DJ? Because DJs always get paid. Is there going to be catering? Because catering always gets paid.
Yep.
And if people have a budget for a DJ and catering, then do not ever do that thing for free. Period. If people are paying to get in, they're paying a DJ, and they're paying catering, do not do that thing for free. Now, you can look at you could go as far as to be like annual operating budget level, you know, level of business, small business corporation, and you can have your enterprise package and your, you know, small entity package. And that is a really great way to start by saying like, my small business package is $5,000. You know, my corporate or enterprise package is $10,000. And that is because only you know the level of work that you put into creating whatever you're working on or creating or what you're going to deliver. And know that the level of work doesn't mean you put in that work every time per se, but it meant like me coming up with the return on relationship framework didn't happen in a couple of hours, right? So that meant, you know, I took time to like sketch it out, write it out. And then when I adapted for enterprise or organization at an enterprise level, I am now adapting what I created over the course of maybe, you know, a month or so to now work for someone else for a month or so, or 2 months, 3 months. And now what that looks like means I have to take what I did and now sit down and adapt it. And so depending on what level of work you're putting in, energy you're putting in, you know, the issue with charging, and this is different, it works different in different cultures, is internal validation versus external validation. For some people, having a lot of things on your resume and a lot of certifications and a lot makes you feel like you have external validation enough to now say, I'm gonna charge $5,000 to come out of the house, right? For some people, they can have all of those things but they don't have the internal validation, which is typically their spirituality, their self-development, their family development, that kind of things. So they're like, yeah, I know I got a degree in chemistry, but I don't know if I should go get this chemistry talk for $300. And you're like, what? Right? That's internal things happening. So you have to reconcile what you're really dealing with and what you really want. You also have to know that you can't want to make money and then be anti-making money. I am hopeful, and just because I'm a serial optimistic, I'm hopeful that capitalism will turn into something that's a little bit more conscious and a little bit better for everyone at some point, or that things will shift in a major way. However, I'm also know that it's hard to want to make more money and hate capitalism. It's just super hard. I mean, you could do it, and so sometimes for people that's also a tug, because I don't mind charging other people, but I have gotten really nervous about charging my communities.
Right.
I don't want to tax my community. I don't want to tax them right now. I don't want to. And then you look up and you realize that your community is actually paying someone who is less knowledgeable than you, cares less than you, because regardless of how you feel about yourself, your community still needs the resources and the knowledge and the leadership. So you have to step into that leadership position and say, I'm not worth a dollar amount, but here's the pathway to the knowledge that I have. Here's the opportunity that I'm creating. You can't put a dollar amount of work, but the opportunity to commune with me looks like you have to have this level of dedication to work with me. And also have really great packaging. But somebody asked me, like, what's the difference between a person that gets 5,000 and a person that gets 100,000? They're like, the packaging.
Yeah. Yep. Well, and the other part, if I can just kind of expand on that question, is where I find myself being challenged is there are the people who could pay versus the people who should pay, and like trying to figure out, like, I think entrepreneurs are a good example. Like, I never want to take money out of the pocket of entrepreneurs in our community, but there are other people in the community who benefit from that entrepreneurship who could potentially be underwriting services or sponsoring kind of things. Like, how do you make those kind of decisions?
It's a yes and. I mean, you hear me say yes and a lot. In fact, I'm just going to start the yes and podcast. But I'm such a I hold the yes and flag. It's a yes and, because if I charge $10,000 for my speaking gigs, then I have space to offer free, consultations for my community. So, but then there's times where I'm like, if my community pays the person who I know is a not so great person, then I am doing a disservice to my community because I'm caught up on not asking them to pay. You get what I'm saying? So I think there's also ways where, visiting sliding scale, visiting pay what you can, visiting, like, you don't just have to settle on, this is $500 and that's it. You don't have it, you can't rock with me. Like, I think coming out of this, coming out of the COVID-19 scare and pandemic, that I'm hoping that people think about different ways to pay for things, that people people will institute more pay what you can opportunities. People that way, the people who can do it, they will. The thing that holds you up there is if they can do it, sometimes they respect the low price that you're charging. And then they attribute the fact that they're charging low to the quality of the program. And so it's figuring out who your audience is, targeting people with different kinds of content, thinking of different ways to allow people to pay, even sometimes thinking the where you want it, then offering scholarships. Right? So it's always a yes and. It's not just like everybody got to pay or not. It was not like you can't pay your out. It is really being creative and thoughtful if you're that kind of person around. I could offer 10 scholarships to this course. I could, then you have to do a bit of work to get it, because sometimes people don't respect free.
Right. Agreed. That's great advice. Thank you.
Yeah.
So speaking of money and the pandemic, that's a good segue into this one. What would your advice be to founders looking for funding right now during these uncertain times? How has fundraising changed from your perspective?
Yeah, so from the I would say from the VC world and that I'm having conversations in, some people are holding on funding anything new. Some people are doubling down on their current investments. Some people are actually watching to see what innovations come out, to say like, how is my portfolio pivoting? How are people out there pivoting and creating something new? Which has been interesting to hear people say that they're like, I might be willing to, look at some other types of businesses, given that people are being a little bit creative and solving a right now problem that can create right now money. Another part of that is thought leadership. Taking whatever you were working on, even if you continue working on it, and figuring out how you can make money through thought leadership. So, can you launch a course about makeup? Can you, launch something that is a series that people pay for around your storytelling? Can you, double down on one of the products you have, even though you offer service? How do you productize service more? How do you make a service? How do you scale a service where it's accessible virtually? Like, I'm seeing people do the thought leadership in a strong way so that they can keep their cash flow going. Virtual conferences, talks, and seminars, and that has been really, really great. But it's not the easy answer. Like, there's lots of people who are doing different fund things. So there's lots of funds. Sarah Blakely has a fund. Hello Alice has a fund. I saw an entrepreneur the other day who's like working with a particular entity who they were giving out $1 million. Like, apply, and nothing else. You get better writing out who you are and what you do. But you at least be in the running. So I would, start to carve out time in your week to just focus on applying. If you weren't already doing that, which if you were raising funding, you probably should have already been doing that. But if you weren't, consider just applying for some of this stuff, because you'll get into the email loop of everything. And funding is a numbers game as well. So the more you're going after it, the more likely to get close to it. But go get customers, honestly, is the best solution.
Yeah. I agree. But everybody's getting a lot more serious about building an actual business now, not just throwing money at stuff like they were previously. Shelly, I could talk to you all day. This hour has absolutely flown by. We usually save the very last question to be from us, from the Portland community, the folks who are here watching online. What can we be doing to help you? How can we be most helpful right now for Shelly Bell? Well,
you can follow me on Instagram, because I want 960 more followers. That is my goal right now.
Chasing the 10K right now.
My Instagram is at I am Shelly Bell. I mean, of course, there's one way. Donate to Black Girl Ventures. I don't care if it's $10, $20, whatever. BlackGirlVentures.org. Donate. Every donation helps us keep our efforts afloat. And also introduce us to people. So there are people who you feel like could be really great funders or partners, sponsors for Black Girl Ventures. Absolutely. If you could shoot us an intro to those folks for us to have more conversations, because, as the people doing this work, we also have to keep ourselves afloat, and fundraising for us looks different. So, donate to Black Girl Ventures, get involved, follow Black Girl Ventures at Black Girl Ventures on Instagram, because we also are pushing out constant content around like how to help us and how to help our entrepreneurs. If you are a Black or brown woman founder, absolutely join theventureleague.com. That is our virtual community. Absolutely join us for virtual co-working. It helps us to see you involved and engaged. If you are an ally, like I said, like if you have content that you could offer, webinar content, host a webinar with us. You're really great at ads and you want to share that with the community, knowledge share. So follow me on Instagram at I am Shelly Bell. Follow Black Girl Ventures on Instagram. Donate to Black Girl Ventures at blackgirlventures.org. If you're a Black or brown woman, join our virtual community at theventureleague.com and join the virtual co-working so that we can make sure that you're supported.
Awesome. Shelly, thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate it. Love to have you back at some point. And if there's anything I can do to be helpful, please don't hesitate to ask.
This was so great. Shout out to Stephen Green for the connection. This was awesome.
Yeah, for sure.
I really appreciate it. Your community, super responsive and really great questions. Thank you for having me.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks so much. We'll talk to you soon.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye.